Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Volunteer West Virginia Wednesday. We're so happy to see you all here today on this beautiful day. We're going to get started in about 1 minute, but in the meantime, we have a chat box question for you all to introduce yourself. So today's chat box question, you can see it on the screen, is in honor of National Volunteer Month. We'd love to hear what organization you're with, and in one word and one emoji, that describes your amazing volunteers. So go ahead, let us know who you're with today, and then pick one word and one emoji that describes your volunteers in honor of National Volunteer Month. And then we'll get started. So if you just joined us, we are sharing what organization you're with, and then in honor of National Volunteer Month, we are sharing one word and one emoji that describes your volunteers. So I wanted to do a shout out to Shannon Griffin from Community Markets. It's good to see you all. And her response was generous. And then we have Taylor Ambrose from the Tucker Valley Foundation. And Taylor just did star eyes, which definitely describes volunteers perfectly. Let's see, let's do a few more. Hi, Brianna. We have Brianna from Western Regional CASA, and their volunteers are caring. And then we have Beth from the H2O Water Network. That sounds really interesting. I don't think I've seen you on our calls before. And their volunteers are dedicated. And let's do one more just for fun. I love all your answers. I feel like we're building up the positive energy for today's webinar. And then lastly, let's say hi to Melinda Jones, our friend at AmeriCorps Seniors at the United Way of Central West Virginia. It's good to see you. And their volunteers are invaluable. And then they have a party face emoji, which is one of my favorites. So go ahead, continue on showing off your volunteers while I do our introduction. My name is Dana Bryant. I'm the Outreach Officer here at Volunteer West Virginia, and I'll be leading today's webinar. And I'm joined by Gina. She's our Disaster Services and Planning Lead. And Gina's going to be helping out, letting you in from the waiting room. So if your internet gets disconnected or you need to step out for a minute, know that we'll let you back into the meeting. And if you have any questions during the meeting, Gina will keep an eye on the chat box. And then lastly, I always like to share that today's meeting is recorded. I'll be sending out a recording after today's presentation, and it'll include the slides for today's presentation. So you can just sit back and relax and enjoy today's training, knowing that all of that will come your way after we're finished. So if this is your first Volunteer West Virginia Wednesday, welcome. We're so glad you're here. This was a program that we started during COVID as a way for us to connect, and it just went so well, we decided to keep it. So I think we're in our 5th or 6th year, time flies, I'll tell you, of doing this webinar training series. And it's a free monthly webinar series where we explain our programs, we network, and most of all, we have fun. So this is going to be a really laid back use of your hour where you're going to learn lots of good ideas for your volunteer programs. Here are our upcoming topics. We have some really good ones down the pipeline. In May, we're going to be talking about grant writing nuts and bolts. This is one of our most popular trainings. We do this every year. And this will be a 2-hour training with Nikki Beck-Colthart from the Grant Advantage. And then Nikki will be visiting again in June, and she's going to be talking about the top 8 mistakes made after receiving the grant. So after you get your money, she's going to talk about the things you want to avoid. And then we're going to have Shannon back in July, and she's going to be talking about essential board member training, roles and legal duties. So if you like her training today, be sure to come back for that. I'm excited for that one. That's a brand new topic for us because board members are volunteers. So you want to be nice to them and get everyone on the same page. And then lastly, we have 2 more community inquiry and assessment techniques. That's coming up in August with Shannon Stober. We work with her a lot. And then Gina will be here in September for Get Ready West Virginia National Preparedness Month, which seems like a long time away, but it'll be here in a blink of an eye. And our schedule runs throughout the entire year, all the way to December. So go ahead to our website, volunteer.wv.gov, to register and put all these free trainings on your calendar. So today's topic is in honor of National Volunteer Month. So I wanted to thank all the volunteer coordinators on the call today, as well as the volunteers, because usually it's the same. If you're managing volunteers, you're also volunteering in your spare time. So thank you. And in honor of this celebration, we're talking all about volunteer retention and recognition strategies. And we are joined by a special guest today, Shannon Chalk. I've had so much fun putting this webinar together with her. This is the first time that Nonprofits Lead has been on this series, so we're really happy to have them. They are based out of Marietta College, and they provide trainings. And Shannon is just absolutely wonderful. She's an AmeriCorps alum with over a decade of experience in the nonprofit sector, including roles with the Girl Scouts and the United Way. So she has a lot of wisdom. Shannon helps organizations build vital capacity in finance, IT, human resources, marketing, governance, and operations at Nonprofits Lead. So you are in for a treat today. Welcome, Shannon.
Thank you. I'm super excited to be here.
So glad to have you. All right, so I'm going to pass the mic to Shannon. If your slides look good, are they up?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Good. All right, perfect. So thank you all again for joining us and spending some of your time talking about one of my most precious topics that I love to train and talk about, which is volunteer retention and recognition, which is just so timely, like Dana pointed out, with Volunteer Recognition Week coming up. I think it starts like the 17th next week, so it's pretty soon. So hopefully there will be some things in here that you find useful and can implement ahead of that. All right. So it's first really important to understand, why do people volunteer, right? So everybody has their own sort of motivation and interest when they decide they're going to volunteer somewhere. You know, time is money. And so if they're going to give something freely, they need to have a good motivation for doing so, right? So I just put some of the most popular reasons that people volunteer on the screen for you. So they have a belief in the mission. Maybe they were impacted by your organization as a child or in a different phase of their life. And so now they're really looking for a way to give back to that, maybe through their connection to community, just a general interest in giving back to their community. There's always some sort of community tie to volunteering, making their community a better place. So that community connection is usually up there for volunteering. Some folks like to have a personal fulfillment. If I can talk to you today, it fills their cup. You know, they get a sense of joy, a sense of pride, a sense of feeling of a belonging. So it kind of fills their personal cup to be involved with you. Some folks may volunteer because of their religious values. So they might find an organization that aligns similarly to them. And so they feel that connection there. They could want to do a skill or a resume building, so that it's a good resume bullet point to be able to show your investment in your community there, and then also for some social interaction. So like I said, this is not all encompassing. This is just some of the most popular reasons that people volunteer. And if you can think of any other reasons that people may volunteer, I would definitely invite you to share those in the chat, because there's a variety of reasons that people volunteer. But it's so important before you can get into recruiting volunteers or even retaining them, and then when you get to the point of recognizing them, to understand what their motivations are. Because finding out their motivation, and you can use that to actually guide their experience. It's so important to have that background knowledge, because that can impact their entire experience with you. Okay, so let's talk briefly here about how to build a positive volunteer experience. So the first thing I want to run through and think about is clarity. So a good mentor of mine likes to say that clarity is kindness. And so any clarity and clear expectations that you can set right up front is going to help increase that volunteer experience. Whether you provide them explicitly with a volunteer job description, hand them a designated set of supplies, talk about certain attire, whether it's wearing a branded shirt or some sort of expectation that you might have for that, Be as clear as possible. Don't bring any assumptions into that and assume, well, they're going to just know that they should bring pen and paper. If that's important to you in their volunteer experience, make sure to highlight that. Being organized. I cannot highlight this one enough because remember, those first impressions start from the very first interaction that they have with you before they might even walk in the door, that they're starting to form their impression of how this entire experience is going to go. So being organized, making sure you have a designated set of tasks planned or tasks you'd like to complete, and then engaging all of your other support staff in that piece. It is not just a one-to-one volunteer coordinator and volunteer kind of experience. So everybody who's going to be involved in this volunteer process, and we'll talk about who to involve in a little bit, but making sure everybody is involved in this piece. Warm welcomes. So I once was talking to somebody who volunteered at an organization and they didn't even know where the bathrooms were. And that experience where nobody mentioned to them, where do you go to the bathroom? You know, that one little question seemed so simple, right? They all, just knew where the bathroom was, but nobody shared that with the volunteers. Little things like that are just making this volunteer's experience. So being warm and being welcome, making sure they have any important information that they need to know, and that you're smiling. It's so simple, but people read your facial expression. And if you're on your phone or clearly mentally in some other space, they're not going to feel as engaged to you. And if you're not feeling engaged with them, it's harder for them to reciprocate that. And then lastly, visibility. This is another one that I think just increases their experience with you, is being able to have a name tag that says, hi, my name is Shannon. That way people in the building or at camp or out at a meeting are going to be able to see who they are and see what their name is and that they're a volunteer. You could provide them with just a badge that says volunteer or a name tag or something to identify them as a volunteer, just so they can be visible. You could do volunteer t-shirts or something of the like. You can be really creative there. But just make sure that your volunteers have something to identify them as such. And a bonus tip on building that positive experience that I would share with you is creating a first-time volunteer checklist. So if your volunteers need to complete a certain amount of training, or they need to be wearing a certain pair of shoes, or if there's anything that's really, really important for that first time that they're there and they don't have any of those expectations, create a little document in PDF or Canva or Word or whatever you're comfortable with, just so you can provide some sort of, this is what we hope you get out of our volunteer experience, but also what we are hoping and expecting from you. And even a more bonus tip to that, make sure it includes your organization's mission statement. Okay, so I've talked a little bit about communication and talking about where the bathrooms are and introducing yourself and being warm and being friendly. So why does that matter, right? Why does all of that matter to volunteering? So good communication shows trust, respect, and can create a sense of purpose for the volunteer. Remember finding out their motivation and using that when you're talking with them. So if someone says to you that they were a client that was impacted by your organization at some point, and they tell you that information, make sure to talk about that. Hey, how was your experience when you were a client? Or did you have a really great experience somewhere? Or find out that information, right? It can just further their experience, but it also just, again, shows trust, respect. You're using good active listening skills, and it makes them feel really valued. So lastly, communication is also a cycle. So don't think that it's okay to just talk to them and greet them as soon as they show up to volunteer. Make sure they're being informed before, during, and actually after that volunteer opportunity. Because like we've talked about, first impressions start even before they walk through your door. So if your first email to them, you call them by the wrong name, or you say this is what their volunteer experience is and they don't even know what they're getting into, those first impressions start from the very, very, very beginning. And just remember to keep that communication going throughout the entire cycle of their volunteer with you. Okay, so here are 3 key principles now of that good communication. First, being consistent. Don't just communicate when you need something. This is often a time capacity issue. We are all so very, very busy. And it's sometimes really easy to push something like this down to the bottom of your to-do list. But don't just communicate when you need your volunteers to be there, right? There should be communication consistently, asking them for their feedback, asking them for their input, but don't just reach out to them when you need something. It could be sending them a quick email and wishing them a great weekend. It doesn't have to be elaborate, right? It doesn't have to cost a bunch of money or cost a lot of your time, but just consistently checking in, making sure they know that you're present and you're available, just is going to continue that good communication and the rapport that you're going to build. So as far as being consistent goes, regular check-ins can also ensure that they stay sustained and want to stay involved. Goodness gracious, guys. So regular check-ins could be some sort of periodic meeting that you set with them. It could be a once a month meeting to discuss any issues or training needs. It could be biannually, it could be annually, right? You have to figure out the kind of rhythm and groove to that for what works with you and for what they're expecting and what you need as well. But regularly checking in is gonna also, again, you're staying present, you're staying at the forefront of their mind when they're thinking about 1,500 other things that they have going on. But regularly checking in and listening to them is gonna help. Being personal, learning and using their name is huge, huge. I'm currently working in academia, and one of the first things I try to do with my students at the very beginning of the year is to truly try to learn their name, because being able to use someone's name when you're talking and being that direct with them, it shows that you're listening. It shows that you care, and it shows that they're not just another number to you, and that their time and presence truly matters. So learning their name and then using it too is another key for you. Like we've talked about, referencing their job or motivation for volunteering. So as we'll talk more on our board training, sometimes skills that they have for the job that they do can be really beneficial to you in their volunteer position. So if they talk about how they are a nurse and you need to have somebody who's first aid CPR certified that you use at your meetings or something, that information is really vital, right? Because if they have a skill that can be beneficial, that makes them also feel like you're listening and you're wanting them to be involved. All right, and then using active listening skills. This is one I feel like is pretty underrated, but sometimes I know I've been in conversations with people who you feel like they're listening to you just because they're waiting to actually respond and not because they're really actually listening to what I'm saying. But that eye contact, that body language of showing, that you're facing the volunteer, you're not faced away, you're not on your phone or otherwise somewhat, disengaged. But those active listening skills that you have and you've developed, make sure you're utilizing them with your volunteers too. And then being mission focused. This is huge, and that we could spend a whole training probably on this part. But it's reinforcing the why and not just the what. Okay. So sometimes volunteers, you just need them to come in and sweep the floors, or you just need them to come in and pull weeds, right? It can seem mundane or simple, but it's really impactful to you because you're getting ready to have an event, and it's important that your building or facility looks really nice and presentable. And so reinforcing that why this matters is so important. Again, sometimes we just push that maybe to the bottom of the list because we just need it done. We just need results. But taking that couple extra step there to just reinforce why this matters and how what they're going to do to impact other people and their community, that's going to be what sticks with them. and they're going to be less likely to be annoyed that you asked them to pick up trash or pull weeds, but they're going to remember how this was impacting everyone. So a great example, we have an annual conference that we do at Nonprofits Lead, which we'll talk about in just a little bit. But we have a group of volunteers that come in to help me stuff bags. And so that's very tedious. You think assembly line, people just pick up a pen and a notebook and a lanyard and a this and a that, and it's tedious, right? So before we start that process, I like to sit everybody down and, really appreciate their time for giving to us, but also understand why they're interested in volunteering and why they're here today. But then I tie this back to the mission of the organization, right? So our mission at Nonprofits Lead is to ensure that all of the nonprofits in our area have access to these vital resources and programs and trainings that we provide. And so we tie their experience of stuffing the bags, which may seem mundane and time consuming, back to this big conference and the programs and why we are here. So our volunteers understand that, yes, they may just be putting things in bags so we can give those out to our attendees, but they're getting to realize that the people that are attending this conference and receiving these bags are doing vital work in our communities, right? They're providing great services, they're serving in these really important roles. And so this bag is such an important part of their experience at the conference. And we talk about all that, right? So it's reinforcing the why they're here and the why of why this matters, and not just the thank you for taking your time to stuff my bag so I don't have to do it. I'm reinforcing why it matters and why it's impactful. And lastly, every interaction is a chance to create change. So, you can't go back and correct if someone had a bad experience with your organization in the past, but every interaction that you have with that volunteer is a chance to change maybe a negative perception they have, or to just reinforce why they love you all so much, right? You're doing such great work in our communities. And every chance you get to talk with them, email them, text them, write them a letter, whatever you're doing, every interaction that you have is a chance to just remind them how appreciative you are and why all this matters. Okay, so this one is maybe the tougher pill to swallow, right? So feedback goes both ways. So feedback is important for everybody. Don't invite your volunteers to share your feedback and then not utilize it. We've all done a survey and felt, oh, they're probably not going to utilize this information. They're not even going to read this. I'm just another survey and another number for them. But don't ask for that information and then not utilize it. Make sure if you're doing a survey that you're debriefing that, right? Not just debriefing the event or what happened, but you're actually taking the time to read through the feedback that they provided you. Because I promise in some level, there's going to be a jewel of information that you didn't know, or that you didn't even realize that you didn't know. So make sure when they're sharing their feedback or when you're asking them to share feedback that you are really being diligent about understanding it and then trying to utilize it. Now, sometimes volunteers will say, well, I'm going to expect a horse and carriage and a 4-course meal and maybe something that's a little unrealistic that you can't provide. So just be mindful of that. But try to utilize, if there are things you can improve upon that are going to make their experience better, it's only going to in turn make your experiences better too. So make sure you're also calculating qualitative and quantitative feedback. So that's a balance, right? You want to know how things went and kind of those feel-good stories of something that happened that was really positive. But make sure you're also capitalizing the qualitative, how many hours they spent, how many bags they stuffed, how many meals they served, because that information is a gold mine for grant applications. So if you didn't know, the current market is for one volunteer hour is worth about $30 in time. And so if you have one volunteer who gave you 5 hours of volunteering, you do 5 hours times $30, that's $150 savings to your organization. So being able to capitalize on some things like that and provide that to a potential funder or a donor is life-changing. They get to see the value in a different way other than we have 6 volunteers that come on a weekly basis. Actually qualifying how much that's actually saving your organization is a big deal for them. All right, so giving and receiving feedback, like we've talked about, it gets you that deeper connection, provides a better experience, and ultimately, which is what you're trying to do, is have higher volunteer retention. So, one thing I would suggest that you practice doing is maybe giving specific feedback. So, not just saying you did a great job, thank you for being here, but specifically saying, hey, thank you for providing 3 hours last Saturday to help us serve client meals. So, make sure they know the specifics of what they did and why it mattered. And again, tie everything back to your mission statement. You know, our backpack program is the most significant program that we do. And you impacted this by helping us stuff 50 backpacks that were given to 50 kids in our community. Tying those small little details is just really going to transform that experience because they're going to be able to see it a little more than just a simple thank you for volunteering with us card might do. Okay, so creating a volunteer culture. So, as we've talked about, creating that welcoming environment. Another one that I think is really important is encouraging those peer relationships. So, if you're in a place where you have a group of 10 volunteers, you might want to go to one of your most trusted volunteers and have them step up to be maybe a volunteer lead or something and encourage kind of leadership and camaraderie between the volunteers. So that person can also serve, as a point of contact between you and the organization, but also to the volunteer. So you could have that lead volunteer work with you to help create this volunteer experience, right? So they can help you learn all the names and learn some motivations and learn some good skills. One thing I don't think I mentioned when we were talking about skills and things is if that volunteer shares a skill or something they're not potentially interested in doing, not every volunteer opportunity is going to be the perfect fit for every volunteer. And so if you have sort of this peer-to-peer relationship, that might help you be able to kind of track some of that situation. So if a volunteer is not comfortable cooking or they're not comfortable public speaking, finding that out too is so important. And within those peer relationships, maybe you can help have that lead volunteer help you identify somebody else who might be a good fit for that. So those peer relationships are so strong and can really, really help create a good volunteer culture. And lastly, make sure to celebrate the team wins, not just as an individual. So again, that could be figuring out the volunteer time dollar number there and figuring out how many collective hours and how many collective dollars. That could be through the entire, if you have a big fundraising gala, so through the whole gala of planning to, your post debrief and things, quantifying the entire volunteer experience and the entire volunteer impact through all of that is just going to help make them see it in a bigger picture. They're going to be, instead of knowing they gave you 2 hours twice, they're going to be able to see it from the start of the event to the very end of the event for themselves, but also for everybody that they volunteered with. Okay, so before we move into sort of some ideas for volunteer recognition, I want to open up the chat, or you can unmute and talk to me. What are other ways you can help create a volunteer culture, or how can you support that volunteer experience and retain your volunteers? Has there been good tips that you've done or things that you've tried that have been really impactful that you might want to share?
So you all are welcome to unmute yourself, or if you want to put it in the chat box, I'll read it for you while you're thinking. And then Shannon, you had two really good questions in the chat box. I don't know if you want to answer those now or wait till the end.
Yeah, I can do that now while people are maybe thinking about some things they've done. So, how does an organization assess volunteer motivation? Survey, an interview. So, you can really do both. I mean, I've seen a number of different things. That could be if you have a volunteer application that they have to fill out, Maybe you ask them on that application to share why they're interested in volunteering with your organization. It could be an anonymous survey if someone's not comfortable sharing that information, with their name attached to it, they want to tell you anonymously. You could do volunteer interviews, whatever works for your time commitments and your time capacity, but also gives you a place to collect that information. So it really could be a survey, application, interview. It could be whatever makes sense to you. But what I just want to make sure to encourage you to is once you get that information, make sure it's accessible and make sure you refer to it and don't kind of drop it in a folder and never look at it again. Okay, so next one, scrolling down here. If the organization is all volunteer led, how do you do so without overburdening those volunteers? Yeah, that's a tough question. So that's a tough question, right? And so that's about setting those expectations and being really clear up front. It's okay to just directly ask them, how many hours per week are you comfortable with volunteering with us? And knowing that that might change based on the time of year or if an emergency arises or something, but being flexible. But it's perfectly fine to ask that up front. Ask them. And also remember how important that feedback is. And ask them, check in, say, hey, I know we had agreed upon maybe doing 6 hours every week, and we're kind of at maybe 5.5 this week. How are you feeling? Are you okay? Are you all right? Do you want to maybe come back in a few days, or are you pretty tapped out for the week? That regular communication and consistent check-in with them should hopefully help overburdening them and hopefully not getting them burnt out. We want to avoid some good burnout. Okay. Thanking the volunteers for the time that they serve. Absolutely. Recognizing a volunteer of the month. 100%. And then this one, incentives are an effective engagement tool for program participants. In my work with individuals experiencing homelessness, incentivized volunteer opportunities have proven to be highly motivating and impactful. Absolutely. And we'll talk a little bit about some of that in our volunteer recognition space. Allison says she's had volunteer meetings with snacks. That's very important. I too would show up to a meeting for snacks. So, but where they can share tips with each other. That's awesome. It helps build camaraderie and encourage volunteers to share and bring attention to the good work that they're doing. That's awesome, Allison. Thanks for sharing that. Amber says in Energy Express, we did a wall of volunteers. Yep. I remember that. We took pictures of each volunteer as they were working with students, posted on social media. Yes. Some of you are just a couple slides ahead of me on this. Jenny says they love to feed people, but a gift certificate to our thrift store is always a welcome treat. Yeah, we're going to get into some of this recognition piece. So you all are right on track with me. Yep. Jason says t-shirts, taking time to get to know the volunteers. Ooh, Sandy has a picnic. Ooh, a movie. Very cool. Okay. Yeah. So you all are really ready to talk volunteer recognition, which is totally fine. So hopefully we'll get some other great ideas coming out of this section. So thinking, kind of switching gears there from creating that volunteer experience and culture, kind of shifting a little bit to recognition and maybe rethinking it. So more than just saying thank you. And so some of you have mentioned some really, really great things in the chat that you'll see on screen and maybe a few new things coming. Okay. So this is my first biggest piece of feedback when talking about recognition is making it a habit, not just checking that you had your annual thank you dinner, right? It is truly something you need to get into the habit of making time to do, which I know time is so, so precious and so, so short, but making sure you're in a cycle again of recognition and not just that single event that we check off and say that we said thank you, right? So I can't reiterate enough, and a lot of you have mentioned it. Thank you so much in the chat, making it personal. Include their name and thinking about their personality. This is a big one too. I wrote this on the slide because I had this happen to me in a couple of different places where I had a volunteer that was just stellar and had done a lot of great work for me. And I was super excited to recognize her. And so at a next meeting or event that I had the opportunity, I made this big production about it. We had cupcakes and we did all these things and totally surprised her. And I saw it the moment I saw her face, she was beet red, poor girl. She was she was like traumatized, like, holy cow, you're putting me up in front of these people and you're saying thank you and all these wonderful things. And it was not the a type of appreciation that she wanted or needed. And so that was a learning experience for me where I tried to figure out some of the personalities of our volunteers. And so, what might have gone better for her was since she was shy and she really wasn't into any of the, the public recognition or praise, she would have been so much more appreciated and valued if I would have wrote her a handwritten note or something instead of publicly, shouting to the rooftops all the great work that she did for me and how thankful I was for her. And that just would have been our better route. So thinking through even those small types of details, some people like the glitz and the glamour and the balloons and the cake and stuff, and some people don't. Some people don't. So thinking about who they are as a person can help that shape their recognition experience with you. So making it timely, recognizing things in the moment. Frequency builds momentum, but don't overdo it, right? We don't want to oversaturate saying thank you because then it might lose a little bit of its value. But making sure in the moment we're saying, hey, thank you for putting those bags away for us, or thank you for folding our t-shirts, or thank you for cleaning this up for us. Making sure in the moment they hear the words thank you, but then when they're done, hey, thank you so much for spending 2 hours with us. Again, tying it back to your mission. This volunteer experience is going to help prepare us to open our store next week, right? So being timely about it, making sure in the moment they hear thank you, even when they're done, even when they get there, say thank you for spending your day with us. And then again, after the fact as well. And then, as we talked about through this whole presentation here, making things mission driven. So tie their effort back to your cause. So for example, there I wrote for you, because of your help, we served 43 families warm meals today. That qualitative and quantitative feedback that you can provide to them, it's truly, truly invaluable. Okay, so I don't want to read all of these to you. Our folks at Volunteer West Virginia is going to send this out for you so you can look through this maybe later, but just some creative low cost ideas that I thought I would share with you. Some personalized thank you notes from your clients, donors, staff, or your board. So whoever you're trying to thank, get some thank you notes. Take, your quarterly team meeting, take a stack of thank you cards and have your team write out thank you cards, or have your CEO write thank you from the CEO, or your board chair thank you from the board of such and such organization. Engaging all of the people in this talks about that volunteer culture that we talked about a little bit ago. But personalized thank you notes are somewhat, I think, dying a little bit, or people are just, oh, I'll send a text or I'll send a quick email, but that handwritten thank you note, man, that goes a long way. I love seeing volunteer of the week social media posts. Those are fun. You can schedule those out if you use Facebook or some other platforms, so you don't have to think about them every single week. You can schedule those out. Hall of Fame pictures in office. Those are some great ideas. Printing out like a picture of your volunteer of the week, or if you have a great picture of volunteers all together and sticking that in your office and writing, thank you to our volunteers. That's awesome. Shouting out during events, again, awesome. But just remember, some of your volunteers may not want to be shouted out, and they might want to be quietly thanked in the back. I love this one, the volunteer appreciation jar and anonymously appraise efforts. Like I said, I've learned some tough lessons over the years with doing volunteering, and I've tried to sometimes scale back my loud thank yous into what is more meaningful to them. So that appreciation jar could be really cool. Donated coupons from local businesses. I've gone to a local Wendy's and got free Frosty coupons. Sometimes McDonald's will do that for you. So going to local businesses, you could support local, We have a really great ice cream place up here in Marietta if you're ever anywhere near Marietta. And we can sometimes get some coupons for like a free cone or something like that. Yes, Abigail Witz. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. She knows. My Marietta grad knows. So just utilizing some of those to, hey, would you give us, 5 coupons for a free ice cream cone or something, and then passing those out to your volunteers. Opportunities for leadership and mentoring. I love this one, especially in the professional development space. So if there's a training that you can provide to them, or an additional resource, or some other skill that you can provide to them that normally maybe would have cost them money, you can provide, access to your upcoming training at a lower cost. Because you're a volunteer, you get to go for 50% off to this training piece. So finding ways to then help them as a person, them professionally, but also your organization. DIY, I love Canva. And if you are a 501c3 organization, please, please, please don't pay for Canva because it is free for you. And if you need help accessing that, my contact information is at the end. I'm happy to set that up or help you set that up. So Canva certificates you can make, so you can design. There's templates on Canva for certificates. You can make fun ones like most likely to always have coffee, or friendliest face, or funniest jokes, or something simple. I'm sure ChatGPT or your neighbor or someone has fun ideas you can make to just do fun little certificates like that to hand out. I love doing the thank you for being so sweet candy or snack. Sometimes if I go after a holiday like Halloween or Easter or something, when there's a bunch of candy, you can get discounted candy at Walmart and like 50% off or something. And sometimes I'll go and get some candy, and then I'll grab like a Hershey bar or something and write like a little sticky note that says thank you for being so sweet and pass it to my volunteer. Simple things like that. Early access and sneak peeks. Oh, I cannot underestimate this one enough. It makes them feel like a VIP, right? Like, oh my gosh, I get first access to register for this, or I get first access to see this new event or this new promotional thing. Anything that they can do that makes them feel a little bit like a VIP, they love that kind of thing. And then badges, pins, patches, anything they can then put on, a jacket or a shirt or something to just show that they're a volunteer. Love that stuff. And as we're going through some of these low cost and different things, different ideas for recognition, if you have any that you really love or that you have found have been super impactful, definitely share them in the chat, because I would love to hear some other ideas for some recognition. But making sure now here, thinking about recognition as an organizational culture. So we're making sure that recognition, again, is a shared event and not just by those directly engaged with the volunteers. So like we said, getting thank you notes from our clients, from our board, from our CEO, from, anybody who's been impacted by the organization, include them in recognition. It goes so far. Building praise into staff meetings, board updates, and newsletters. So if you had a really, really cool volunteer experience or an amazing volunteer, send that out in your annual newsletter, or if you have a MailChimp or Constant Contact, some sort of listserv, you could highlight fantastic volunteers or something fun, just to highlight that. But building consistent praise into different things that you do that are not just volunteer events is going to help you remember how important this really is. And remember, volunteers can eventually be donors or board members for you in the future. So they already kind of have the buy-in for why they love your organization, and they're already connected to you. So remember, at some point, they may then turn that around with dollars. They may then turn around and want to be on your board. So remember, your volunteer base can then build you a pipeline for future donors and future volunteers, and make it a legacy thing. A grandma volunteered, so her daughter volunteers, and her granddaughter volunteers, just trying to remember that their volunteer service with you isn't just immediate, and that there can be lasting impacts in a few years or longer. Okay. So I am not a volunteer end of year dinner or banquet hater. I don't totally hate volunteer end of year dinners and things, but they can be so time and money consuming. So when you're thinking about this big event that you do, thinking about the time that your staff or other volunteers are putting into this, making sure you're getting a good ROI. And if you are and it works for you, love it. Keep doing it. But if you are in a place of thinking that it may be too time or too money consuming, here are potentially some good opportunities for alternatives here. So, appreciation picnics and dessert bars. Man, I have found dessert bars are so popular. Build your own ice cream sundae, make your own ice cream sandwich. I mean, those types of things. I will be your first volunteer in line to come and have an ice cream sandwich. And they typically are a little more cost effective. I love this one. This one goes back to my Girl Scout roots with campfire story nights. Getting a group of people together, having a campfire, maybe doing some s'mores, just a simple like get together just to build camaraderie. So fun. Build your own. If you can tell, I'm a fan of the build your own types of things. So building your own coffee or drink night. We've done hot chocolate bar, so people can make a hot chocolate and then they've put caramel and marshmallows and whipped cream and all kinds of things and had a drink with us and just sat and talked, and it was so fun. I love this one too. The low cost signs of a cool volunteer lives here for you. So finding ways to make recognition also marketing for you. So putting your logo and your name on that, and maybe even like a QR code of a scan here to learn how to volunteer or something that they can post, they can post on their door or in their front yard, or you could even make it. I've seen some that are like stickers for cars. So a cool volunteer drives this car or something fun like that. Little decals you can make. And then the last one, which I think can't be understated enough, handmade gifts from clients or peers or anybody handmade providing gifts. Those are so special because you took that extra amount of time out of your day to just think of them, and maybe you like to sew, and so you sew them a little blanket or something like that. Anything handmade, those gifts are so fun. And then my little star tip for this one is just bring it back to your mission. So if your mission is to provide food, then maybe it's a brown bag luncheon or a potluck. Find a way to make your mission part of this too. Okay, so I have talked to you all quite a lot, so I would love to also open it up for any additional questions or other things that you have seen. And I think I saw one more question in here about tips for retaining volunteers when an organization's successes are very long term and there are very few opportunities for like the immediate gratification. Okay. So groups who are trying to restore waterways and watersheds from years of degradation, we're trying to fight long battle against poor land use or decisions that require monthly years of attending. Yeah. So that immediate gratification is that one's tough too. So I think the tying that one really back to the mission is going to be so important for you because you really are playing the long game, right? You're not seeing that immediate impact. So I would recommend maybe doing some before and after pictures that you can utilize. So if you have volunteers before, you can get a group shot with them showing where they're at before. And then maybe after they're done volunteering that day, you can take an after photo to show maybe the difference. And then just also, I would say being really transparent about the fact that this is, a long-term game, and that it's so important to, seeing these impacts in 3, 5, 10 years or 20 years or whatever. Being transparent with them about that, right? Like, this is something that we're investing in our community, and we appreciate your investment in making this happen. So I think clarity and transparency is really important. Yeah. So super excited about that one. That one's a little harder for sure. Yes. Record all your efforts throughout the year so they can see a long list and celebrate the ripple effect. Yeah, that's an awesome idea. You're welcome, Abigail. Anybody have any other questions or feedback on this? I love to learn too. So if there's something that you're doing that is fantastic or that you've tried, or if you've tried it and it didn't work, I would love to be able to talk through why it didn't work or what you could do or what maybe you learned and what you tried differently, if there's anything like that that you could share. Hmm. Thank you, Cindy. It's good to virtually see you. Okay, Summer, we would like to eventually have a live calendar on our website that would have volunteer opportunities on it and a link to sign up. That's awesome. Yeah, I love that idea. Help me convince the board that volunteers are worth $30 an hour. Yeah, that's a great one. If you figure out how to crack that one, Jenny, my contact information's in a few slides. I'd love to see it. Then Christine shared getting a food truck was a fun, less labor intensive end of year celebration. That's cool too. Yeah, that's a great idea. Think about your community. Think about the fun things that are in your community. If you have a local park that you could go to that maybe they would be willing to help sponsor your volunteer event and provide things for it. They are benefiting in some way, right? If you have great volunteers. So talk to them too. Get partners, get other organizations involved in that. Jenny, have a funder convince them. Yeah, in-kind time is almost always allowable match. Yeah, that's so true. Okay, well, I'll have Dana switch our slide here one more. So I'll share a little bit about an upcoming event that we have. So Nonprofits Lead hosts an annual conference that we have been doing now for about 17 years. So we've been doing this for quite a few years now. So this conference focuses on capacity building for nonprofits. So we have 6 tracks that are on finance, IT, the things you can read there on our screen, marketing, operations, and governance. And so you're able to actually kind of customize your experience at this conference. So you're not tied to, if you select finance, you don't have to pick all of the finance sessions, right? You can pick a finance session, a marketing session, and then an IT session. So you can totally customize your experience there. And it is on, like I said, it's on May 13th up here at Marietta College. Our keynote speaker is Dr. Michelle Foster from the Greater Kanawha Valley Foundation. And they have also generously agreed to provide financial assistance to attend our conference to any nonprofit that is in their service area. So if you're in the Kanawha, Boone, Putnam, I think there's like 4 or 5 counties that they serve. If you're in those areas and would like to join us on May 13th to experience our conference, also hear Dr. Foster if you've never had the chance to sit in on a presentation that she's done. She's amazing and fantastic. They are willing to help you offset the cost to come to that conference. Current registration is open through May 1st and is $70 a person, which includes access to your whole event, all of the sessions, all of your food. And as you probably have heard, I'm a fan of ice cream. So we're also going to have an ice cream sundae bar at the end, of Qdoba for lunch, and then breakfast at the beginning. And then we're super excited to also mention that we have a huge vendor fair this year. So we have 37 vendors from across West Virginia and Ohio that provide some sort of product or service to nonprofits for that. So they will be there willing to engage with you and have some prize drawings and some incentivization there to attend. So if you're interested in learning more or are interested in attending, you can definitely scan that QR code on the screen. And then the next one has my contact information on it. So you could also reach out to me, especially if you're in that Greater Kanawha Valley coverage area and want to take advantage of some of that financial assistance through the foundation. You can definitely reach out to me and we can get you signed up.
Great plug, Shannon. $70. That's nothing, you all. You couldn't even eat 3 meals for that. I don't know. Maybe you
Probably
could.
not.
Sounds like a great bargain, and it'll be such a great community. And I hope you all think about attending, especially if you're in the Kanawha Valley, and you can
Yeah.
um, take up Shannon on that scholarship from the Greater Kanawha Valley.
Yes.
So let's see, we have about just a few more minutes. Any final questions for Shannon? What do you think? I just wanted to thank you, Shannon. I love this presentation. You had so many gems in there and you explained everything so clearly and concisely. So I feel like everyone's going to walk away with something. Some of my favorite thoughts were clarity is kindness. So true. And
Yep.
then I love that appreciation doesn't have to cost much. It could
Nope.
be free. It just takes a moment of kindness and recognizing what someone's doing well. So I really appreciated everything you gathered for us. You did a spectacular job.
Thank you.
Does anyone want to have any? Oh, Anne would like to know your contact information.
Yes, it's on the next slide if
Okay,
you want to.
perfect segue.
Yes.
So
That's
here's
our
Shannon's.
email, phone number, and our website. We do have a Facebook page. I didn't include that in this, but we do have a Facebook page, which is Nonprofits Lead. So you can follow us there if you're interested in seeing our updates on social media. But there's our email and phone number and such if you're interested in reaching out.
Shannon, do you want to quickly tell everyone what else you do? Because I know you teach. Just give them an overview of all the fun stuff you do at Nonprofits Lead.
So we do annual programming and workshops and then our big conference, which is every May. And then I also teach a class, an academic class here at the college, where we take current students at Marietta College and we place them on the board of directors of a nonprofit for a year. So this is a program that's for nonprofits that are local to us because there is just a lot of there's a lot of communication and some in-person things that we require out of that. But our students spend the first 6 months of their time with our nonprofits learning about board governance. So we teach them how to read a financial report, what's a 501c3, what are Robert's Rules of Orders, the 10 rules and responsibilities. So things that every good board member should know when they join a board, but they often don't always get training to know that. And then the second half of the year, I teach them how to write a capacity building grant. So it's not meant to pay a bill or something like that. It's meant to increase the organization's capacity in some way. And they will actually write the whole grant. So they do the budget narrative and they figure out how much everything costs and they do all of that work. And then they present it at the end of the year. And then our students will come back together and decide on which grant they felt built the most capacity. So I don't decide, my students get to decide that. And then once the students have made their decision, then our program actually writes a check for $5,000 to that organization at the end of it. So only one organization gets it. But then organizations have had a board member for a whole year. Our students get that very, very invaluable experience. And then the students do leave that grant with the organization, so they can then choose to apply later, send it to a different foundation, different funder or what have you. But that grant's written and they can do what they want with it after. We have some students that choose to stay on the board. And so they're still volunteering in that space. And some choose to roll off, but still volunteer. So it's a way to keep them engaged in the community and get our nonprofits some additional capacity.
Wow, you do so much. Thank you for all that you do for the nonprofits in our region and for future nonprofit leaders. You're growing those too. So you're doing a spectacular job. And she's a one-woman show, you all. I mean, she has support, but she pretty much does all of it by herself. And she has volunteers and other members in your department. But I'm really impressed. So thanks, Shannon. If you liked your presentation, come back in July. She'll be here for board member rules. I'm blanking, but board member training. And we'll see you all next month for grant writing training. Thanks, Tal.
Bye.
Bye. See you all. Did you get to see all your sweet messages in the chat?
So yeah, I was seeing some of them come through. Yeah.
Good. I didn't want to end it before you got to read them all.
That was nice. I'm glad they got a lot out of it.
Yeah, I think everyone loved it. It was a success.
Good,
I'll be in touch.
good.
See y'all soon. Bye.